What's up, everybody? I'm Osiris, and today we are doing a little bit of not unboxing because I already unboxed this lens. It's the Sigma 70-200. We're kind of doing somewhat of an unboxing, kind of like my first impressions, first thoughts about this lens as I took it out the box. But unfortunately, I recorded this video already, and let's just say I wasn't happy with it, so I'm doing it again. This is now a few days later. I'm gonna have another episode coming out soon as far as my results and my test. But these are, kind of a repeat of my initial thoughts about this lens and some of the concerns that I've heard watching other YouTube channels speaking about this lens and trying to decide whether or not they want to go with this lens or go with this 70-180 Tamron lens. So I want to take some time to really speak about these two lenses right in front of me. Everybody's opinion for surely is subjective, and I got some subjective opinions about these lenses at this point in time. So initial thoughts, give you guys a little bit of a backstory first. The first lens that I ever purchased was the 16-35 G Master lens. And I remember when I was out thinking about which lens I was going to purchase, first, I came across a Peter McKinnon video, and he was talking about, hey, get a 16-35 first, mainly because I could vlog with it. Now, if you're not vlogging, then, get the lens that you think you need the most. But as a new photographer or new videographer, it's going to be hard to decide which lens you want first. So with that being said, I opted to go with the 16-35. And I quickly realized there's, at the time when I first purchased it, we're talking now more than 6 years ago, when I first purchased that lens, it was exciting for me. Maybe not the first thing I did, but I took it to a graduation. Since I get to that graduation, I was able to get some great photos with the lens, but I realized when you're far away at a graduation, you can't zoom in to see who you're taking a picture of. There's no subject isolation, quote unquote.
Drunk driving, losing all intention, falling. Once I was living for the passion, now it's all missing without you. Yeah, I'm speeding 91, drunk driving, losing all intention, falling. Once I was living for the passion, now it's all missing.
Now, in some situations, the 70-200 is probably not going to be enough, but it's going to get you there, right? So I do feel like there are some reach limitations with the 70-200. So even if you're doing, let's say, any type of event, let's just say you're going out shooting football. If you're not on the sidelines and you're shooting football, it's going to be kind of hard for you to get the shots that you want to get. You're going to need something that's going to be able to reach a little bit further, something like a 300 or 400 type lens, or you're going to need some type of a teleconverter. Now, that's not per se the type of photography I'm doing right now or the type of videography that I'm doing right now, but at some point in time, it may be something that I want to do, especially as my kids are getting older, especially as I'm thinking about the types of events that I'm going to be going to. So with all of that in mind, making a choice for a lens and my future needs is important to me, especially being price conscious about pricing. Initially, let's talk about my initial thoughts about this lens. Initially, holding this lens in my hand, I can tell you that it's definitely a much heavier, much more robust type lens. Now, I purchased the 70-180 first because I was looking for the lens or a zoom lens pretty quickly. And I must say that I'm not unhappy with this lens. But after purchasing this lens, shortly afterwards, the Sigma 70-180 came out, and that was like, yo, I need to make sure that I got the right lens for myself, because I honestly, I wasn't sure that I got the right lens for myself. There are some very serious caveats, I would say, between these two lenses that you're going to want to consider in comparing them and deciding which way you want to go. And I think that's mostly going to come down to weight, right? So I've taken some images with the 70-180. And again, in a future video, I'll show you comparison images of them both. You're not getting a bad image with this lens. Matter of fact, you're getting some really nice images with this lens. I've also taken some photos at this point in time. So it's kind of hard to say my first impressions with this lens. You're going to get some good photos out of this lens. Where they differ at is really in size, right? As well as this is a 70-180 and this is a 70-200 lens. Some people will say that the extra 20 millimeters is not that big of a deal. I personally think that it makes a difference when you need that extra 20 millimeters of reach, depending on how you're trying to frame your subject. Now, obviously, you can do things like cropping in to get the same quote unquote effect. But when you're out there trying to shoot and you're trying to get your shot, personally, I think that the extra 20 millimeters of reach makes a difference to me, especially if you don't have room to move around. If you have room to move around, the 70-180, it's not gonna, you step maybe, I don't know, 5 steps forward and you, or a few steps forward and you make up for the difference in the 20 millimeter lens. But if you don't have the ability to move around, then the extra 20 millimeters might make a difference, okay? Especially when it comes down to cropping. Now, I'm shooting with the A7 IV when it comes to photography and the A7S III when it comes to video. Obviously, both are very capable video shooting cameras, and you can get some decent photography done with the A7S III, but the reach is important. And then when you have to think about cropping in, I got 33 megapixels on the A7 IV and 12 megapixels on the A7S III. So it makes a big difference, when you're thinking about cropping in. And I can definitely tell the difference in quality between the A7 IV doing photography and the A7S III. It's a big difference in my opinion. All right, so you are going to get faster autofocusing. And if you're in lower light, this lens is going to focus a little bit better than this lens. Now, I'm not telling you that I'm blown away by the differences that you get with the focusing points, but there are differences. So I took both of these lenses to Knott's Berry Farm. I realized that a theme park is actually a really good place to do test video and test photography with your lenses, because you could try to take pictures of people on roller coasters and different rides. Kids are running around moving. So you're going to get your challenge worth at the amusement park. It's just what it is, So, if you're looking for a place to really test out your photography skills and your ability to capture great images, if you decide to buy either one of these lenses, I would recommend going to an amusement park, take the kids to amusement park and do that. But, you have your autofocus, manual focus lock, right? Which you can set to a custom button over here, or you can set to any one of these, to this little button over here. But you don't really have a lot of customizations that you can do with this lens. I don't know if that really matters, because these days, especially if you're shooting with Sony, you can very easily customize any button on the back of your camera to do what it is that you really want to do. So I can't say that's a big negative con for me. The other things that people talk about, this 70-200 Sigma lens, how far the zoom ring is out. In comparison, they prefer that you put the zoom ring back here, but even with my Tamron, the zoom ring is still up here. The big difference is that it's a bigger lens. So your arm will sit further out when you're doing pictures. With that being said, I was able to one hand both of these lenses. You definitely feel the difference when you're one-handing your camera and your lens with this lens versus this one. There's a considerable weight difference and there's a considerable height difference. Both of these do not have the hood on. And we're talking about 2.5 inches, roughly almost 3 inches of difference in height. So when you're packing these lenses away, you're going to get more room to put this away than you are this. It's going to make a difference. And I had to reorganize my bag. I got the Peter McKinnon everyday bag. I had to reorganize my bag to be able to fit this in there with some of my other filters, lens filters, move some of my other ND filters and polarizers around in order to be able to fit this lens laying down. This can almost stand up. All right, so for example, this lens going in here, it sticks up. I technically can still lay it down and zip it up, although I wouldn't do this with this particular lens because I wouldn't want anything to break, but that's standing up and that's me zipping it up. I am not standing that up and I am not zipping that up. Now, I would probably likely still lay both of these lenses down, but even when you lay them down, you know, there's just more room in the bag to fit something else. You know, again, I'm talking about my filters right beside it. Whereas this takes up one of my little organizers that I have in my bag. It fully almost takes it up. So here's my organizer. And just so that way for demonstration purposes, you guys can see roughly what that is actually really doing is taking up, you know, the full amount of space. Now, all I have enough room to do is fit a couple filters on the side right there. And I could realistically fit a couple things right over here just to make it a little bit more, you know, pack it up a little bit more. But compare that to your Tamron laying down, you have a lot more space to really fit more things over there on this side. Plus, you have more space on top. So with that being said, you know, those are the main differences that you're going to get when it comes to the physicalities, the first impressions of these lenses. Right there will be easy enough for some of you to make a decision on which lens to go with, which lens not to go with. Now, some other things about this lens that I didn't really find to be an issue, I'm gonna call it this hood. I mean, just putting the hood on and taking the hood off. Some people were complaining about this. It definitely is a little bit of cumbersome of a thing. You have to have two hands while using it. But this makes a big difference. I mean, it doesn't make that big of a difference in my opinion. Now, of course, it's easier to grab this guy and just twist it on and be done with it. But I mean, it's not that much of a difficult situation to unscrew a couple screws and take it off. So that's what I'm looking at. That's what I think about that. I think people kind of made that a little bit of a bigger deal. I think it's a pretty secure fit. I mean, if you're really used to, it is a few thumb screws ergonomically. It's just faster and easier to take this on and off. You know, I mean, that's really quick, but I don't think personally it's a deal breaker. And when you're thinking about getting a camera, personally, this feels pretty cheap. I don't anticipate it will break, but if you drop it, it will break. So all in all, in comparing these two guys, the big difference is going to be the weight, size, height. 77 millimeter thread. I think this might be like a 67 millimeter thread. Yeah, 67 millimeter thread. So 77 versus 67. Comparisons wise, just not really using the lenses and speaking only from a place of not using them, even though I have used both of them, I would pick the Tamron for size and convenience over the Sigma. In my next video, I'm going to talk about more in-depth details about using both these lenses. And then that's where my final decision will be actually made at, as far as which lens I'm going to keep and which one I'm going to send back, because I have literally probably another week probably to send this lens back before I won't be able to send it back anymore. Hopefully that helps you guys, at least gives you guys a good comparison between these two. Oh, you know, one other complaint that I've heard about this lens, again, has to do with this hood. And the complaint is, once you have this hood on, it limits your access to the zoom ring. And I agree with that, but while I had this lens on, I didn't really find it to be as much of a problem as some of you guys. It is dumb. It wouldn't be as big of a problem if they didn't create a little bump right here. This little bump that they created, I don't know why they created it. It's almost like maybe they're trying to reduce overall size of the lens. This bump kind of throws you off a little bit, but I was able to put one finger on this and kind of quickly zoom back and forth. Now the throw is longer than the G Master 70-200, because I've never owned the 70-200. I've had the chance to hold it in my hands. It doesn't make that much of a big deal to me. So that's where we're at with these lenses. I'm going to go ahead and end this video right here, just because I've been talking for about 25 minutes. Peace.